Good morning, Mac sales team. I would love to hear how the new MacBooks are selling. Oh yeah, Tim, so many people are buying that MacBook Pro 13-inch, even though it's nothing like the rest of the MacBook Pros. It's great. Really? That is fascinating. I would have thought the M2 MacBook Air would have sold better because of how much better it is as a product and of how much cheaper it is. You're right, Tim, it is better in basically every single way, but the thing is, it doesn't have the word Pro in the name, and so many people like that word Pro that they'll spend a premium on a worse product for it. That is fascinating that just 3 letters can make such a difference. Yeah, that's why AirPods Pro are selling so well too. It's great. Well, we do have the iPad Pros, we have the MacBook Pros, we have AirPod Pros, we have iPhone Pros. Why don't we bring the Pro to even more products? I'm pretty sure we have a Pro version of just about everything. Oh! You hear what I'm saying? Exactly. I think you deserve a raise. I'm gonna need a raise to afford this freaking Apple Watch, if you know what I'm saying. Oh! Yes. Seriously, Tim, the prices of housing have skyrocketed. Can I please get a raise? You're funny. I'm actually thinking about joining this union thing. It sounds like a good idea. Don't even joke about that. Okay, bye. Let's begin. So the most recent updated round of Apple Watch Series 8 reports, which of course dropped just a mere couple of hours after my last Series 8 video, detailed some of the pricing and some of the new branding techniques Apple may be going forward with on this rugged Apple Watch version that we've been talking about for a while, but honestly the leaks just started to twist and I think the reality of the situation started to settle in. So yes, Apple is working on an Apple Watch with probably a more flat glass panel, and yes, Apple's working on a newer watch with a larger display, somewhere between 5 and 7% more than the current Series 7. And this one is supposed to use more rugged materials or a more durable metal now. I don't know how you make it immune to scuffs or dents and scratches like our typical Apple Watches get, but Mark Gurman said some kind of higher quality material that's likely not aluminum. But now the argument has pivoted more towards this being a Pro model. So yeah, bringing the Pro terminology basically to the one last product category that Apple hasn't brought Pro to. I guess there's no Apple TV Pro yet, but that's kind of in its own weird category. But I think Apple has absolutely figured out the idea that the term Pro really just means slightly more features at a higher price. You know, AirPods Pro, I don't know how that constitutes professional or productivity in any way. Basically, it just means active noise cancellation with rubber tips. That somehow makes it more professional in some regard, but in that same way, the Apple Watch Pro is not more focused on productivity. I think that Pro doesn't really mean professional or anything, it just means a higher priced version of the Apple Watch that is rocking more features. And from a business perspective, I think it's starting to make sense as to why right now is the best time to launch an Apple Watch Pro. May sound crazy or stupid to some of you, but the reason it makes sense to me is, of course, during the chip shortage and during the inflationary environment we're in, they're kind of starting to restrict a lot of newer features towards higher priced models. That's why the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max sound the most interesting, and the regular iPhone 14s almost sound like no changes at all other than the new screen size. But even the A16 chip is now rumored to only be available in the Pros, and Kuo is saying that's going to be the new standard from here on out. They're just going to put the latest A series chip in the Pro options, not in the entry-level options, to, for one, save on cost, and also to give the Pros a little bit more of a selling factor as all technology is kind of maturing and peaking. And this has been a running problem we've experienced with the Apple Watch line for years, is that they're kind of quickly running out of major upgrades to get people to get excited for and say, hey, you know what, I should upgrade to that, because there's no camera, and that's what like 60 to 70% of the iPhone upgrades are. You don't have anywhere to improve on the Apple Watch with that, but as soon as you start trying to implement new features or new designs or bigger displays or bigger batteries, all that kind of stuff is adding to the overall cost. So if Apple does want to launch a new Apple Watch and talk about all of its greatest new features, introducing it on a higher price watch gives them a lot more flexibility and also gives them a lot more to talk about. Whereas if they continue to restrict themselves to that, well, it has to start at $400 or it has to start around $500, then there's only so much they can really add. And a lot of people thought the Apple Watch Series 7 wasn't that exciting. I really love the new display because I thought this is one of the last few things you can improve on the Apple Watch design, and in terms of functionality, there's not much more they can do anyway. I know know, every year, everyone just continues to ask for a better battery life, but just keep in mind, it's not like there's a giant empty space in the Apple Watch that they could fill with more battery capacity. The only reason Apple Watch competitors have better battery life is because they have much, much worse performance with worse GPUs, lower refresh rates, and very, very slow responsiveness on the display. And I don't think very many people want to compromise on that, considering a lot of people were disappointed with the S7 chip being basically a repackaged version of the S6 chip. And even though it's an Apple Watch, and I've always thought that CPU and GPU performance doesn't matter that much at the end of the day, a lot of people have complained about there not being enough CPU upgrades on the Apple Watch. So if Apple started going the opposite direction to improve battery life and started downgrading the performance and making the graphics worse, that would make the watch just age much terribly, and they're kind of bumping up against the laws of physics when it comes to how much better the Apple Watch battery life can get. But hopefully the Apple Watch Pro can start to address that by having an overall larger chassis that has a more durable type of glass. Maybe that doesn't have to take up so much internal space on the Apple Watch. Perhaps then they can expand the overall battery capacity on the inside. But again, the downside here, you know, it's easy to hear Apple Watch Pro and get excited, but Mark Gurman as well as others are now agreeing on this Pro model, of course, is going to cost more. And he's actually expecting it to be somewhere in the ballpark of $900 to $1,000. And maybe this will start to replace the Apple Watch Edition line, which has existed since the beginning, but I think there's a decent chance a lot of people have caught on to the resale value of Apple Watches and how they're not very good compared to iPhones. So spending $1,000 or $2,000 on an Apple Watch that only gets software updates for a few years, or more people have figured out that after 4 or 5 years, the battery health in your watch deteriorates so much that it's really not worth investing that much in one, and maybe sales have flatlined for the Edition. Of course, Apple will never say that, and we'll never get confirmation on what the actual sales numbers are for the Apple Watch Editions, but if I were to just base it on, you know, my anecdotal sample size and seeing what Apple Watches people in the tech community buy versus what people in the real world buy, I feel like not that many people are actually buying them, and maybe Apple's thinking, okay, we have to justify charging more for an Apple Watch, which is understandable because from the beginning, the Apple Watch Edition always costed way more, but basically came with no other features. It was the exact same watch, same silicon, same battery, same display as the far, far cheaper Apple Watch Sport in the original, and even the aluminum ones that people mostly buy today. So if Apple Watch Pro is going to replace the Edition, it's got to justify it by having better battery life or perhaps a newer design and maybe even different health sensors. So as exciting as it is to say, wow, there's going to be all these new features and the design may change and the battery life may get better, that does mean that the regular $400 to $500 Apple Watches they sell will likely not be that exciting or that different. Maybe there will be a regular Apple Watch Series 8 that has almost everything in common with the Apple Watch Series 7 other than maybe a handful of new colors, slightly tweaked silicon, and hopefully they're able to fit a body temperature sensor on that version. But all of the more exciting upgrades that a lot of people were looking forward to, whether it be the newer design, the more premium materials, and the better battery life, that may all come at a premium that many people won't be willing to pay for. So that's kind of the downside of there being an Apple Watch Pro now, is it means that they may start to easily slack off on the entry-level Apple Watches, which I think is what most of us were buying anyway. And the only thing that makes me really nervous about Apple making an Apple Watch Pro is the idea that perhaps, because Apple knows how much this means to me, if they add 120 hertz to the Apple Watch, you know I'm gonna have an identity crisis and I'm probably just gonna start screaming. I bought this watch expecting it to be the last big display upgrade for years, and even if they did the squared off Apple Watch, I didn't think that would look as good as the display spilling over the edges like it does on mine, but they're gonna freaking tempt the heck out of me to upgrade if I can get ProMotion on my wrist. I have it on my MacBook, on my phone. I've been spoiled, and I want that peanut butter visuals blessing my eyes every time I check the time. So Apple, please don't put ProMotion on the Apple Watch. My bank account is not ready for that yet. But are there other features in the future you could see Apple restricting to the Apple Watch Pro? And does this make you disappointed if you were only planning on buying a $400 to $500 Apple Watch? All of those false expectations, let me know what you're thinking down below. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you all in the next one.